Hey guys, Rexter here, and welcome back to a brand new Fnaf Security Breach Ruin video. In today's video, we're going to be revisiting the mysterious death of our beloved Glamrock Bonnie. Now, in the first video that we did on the channel, I said multiple times that I do believe that Montgomery Gator is the perpetrator behind Glamrock Bonnie's death. And to me, this made the absolute most sense. However, the more I've thought about it over the past couple days, I've realized that he was actually set up. Now, I'm sure this sparks a lot of questions, so let's go ahead and take a deep dive into this theory. But before we do me a big favor. Go ahead and comment down below some of your favorite theories that you would like me to explore in a future video. But without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, it's time to get started. So grab a snack and let's go ahead and jump in. So what better place to start than in the Mega Pizzaplex itself? Obviously moving over to Bonnie's bowling. Now, we discussed this in the previous video. However, in order to find Bonnie himself, you have to go around the entire Pizzaplex and deactivate the caution bots, or as Daco likes to call them, the Pat Pats. These caution bots are spread all throughout the map. And what's interesting about them is as you deactivate them, of course only being able to do it with the Vanny mask on, they release a sheer cry, similar to that of a child. So obviously that sparks a big question. Who exactly is crying when you deactivate these bots? My theory here is actually quite simple. I believe that the shrieking is coming from the missing children that have gone missing around the Pizzaplex. Now, in case you're wondering who I'm talking about, if you go back to the ending where Gregory escapes the Pizzaplex, however is living homeless, you will see that he is covering himself with a newspaper. And on this newspaper, it discusses the missing people around the Pizzaplex. But enough on that, because that's not what this video is about. So moving back over to Glamrock Bonnie. So we had obviously heard rumors of his existence in FNAF Security Breach. We finally get a good glimpse of our favorite rabbit in the FNAF Ruin DLC. Finding him behind the walls of Bonnie's bowl, he is in some bad shape, with a huge gash in the middle of his stomach, and even being hit on the head with a bowling ball. Glamrock Bonnie is left ready to be decommissioned, surrounded by caution bots, almost as if he used the very last bit of willpower in his body to call for help. The next step of this video is to find out exactly how he got in this situation. Now, if you remember, in the FNAF Security Breach base game, we find an errant behavior report saying Monty didn't show up for the main stage performance again. We found him in the same place where we always do, the catwalks over Monty Golf. We can't have a repeat of last month. Someone hit the hole-in-one on the hurricane bucket, knocked him down, and both his legs were broken and required emergency parts and service work. Now, the reason I bring up this report to begin with is to point out the sheer fact that Montgomery Gator was not chosen or put in the pizzeria to replace Glamrock Bonnie. You see, Monty Golf was already an established attraction within the Pizzaplex. That right there alone will tell you that they had no intentions of replacing Glamrock Bonnie originally. So then the question is, what actually happened to him? And that is where I pull up the security report, which was left at 12:24 a.m., stating that Bonnie is seen leaving his green room in Rockstar Row, heading east towards the atrium. At 2:40 a.m., Bonnie enters the East Arcade, and at 4:12 a.m., Bonnie enters Monty's Golf. So assuming that Bonnie walked out of his green room and towards Monty's Golf, he must have passed a few familiar places. These places include Roxy's Raceway and of course Bonnie's Bowling. And he eventually ends up in the East Arcade. But notice, he left at 12:24 a.m. and didn't arrive until 2:40 a.m. So what took Glamrock Bonnie so long to get there? And what's even more strange is he didn't arrive to Monty's Golf until 4:12 a.m., an additional hour and 30 minutes. So unless Bonnie was taking a nap, he had some type of interaction in between these areas. But more on that later. Fast forward to the third and final report that we do find in the Pizzaplex, the management report. It's claiming that the Bonnie bowling alley needs a retheme. While most of the Bonnie art was removed, kids keep asking, where is Bonnie? And do we have an official approved response? Now, this right here points out a lot to me. For one, Bonnie was already a crowd favorite, so why on earth would Fazbear Entertainment take him out of the Pizzaplex unless they had no other choice? It's proving that they had no ill intention of replacing him with Montgomery Gator to begin with. But that still leaves a lot of question. If we go back to his body found behind Bonnie's bowl, you'll notice that Glamrock Bonnie has a giant gash within his stomach, obviously filled with a green paint, thus sending us all for a loop and obviously pointing to the fact that this had to have been Montgomery Gator. I mean, the proof would be right there in front of us. It literally doesn't get more obvious. Glamrock Bonnie goes, Monty takes his place, and he's left covered in green paint all over his stomach. But what if I told you that this was all just a setup? Now, I realize me saying that will spark a lot of controversy in the FNAF community, but let's just do a quick rundown of all the suspects to prove Monty's innocence. So, the first one being Glamrock Freddy. Now, this one can just be disproven right away, because Glamrock Bonnie and Glamrock Freddy were actually best friends. If you recall, if you take Glamrock Freddy up to Bonnie's bowl in FNAF Security Breach, he gives you a short voice line saying, "I do not come up here anymore. I miss him," obviously referring to his good friend Glamrock Bonnie. I'm sorry, ladies and gentlemen, but if he were the one to murder Glamrock Bonnie, I don't think he would care this much. Unless, of course, it was his prototype. But we're not even going to dive into that today. So we can just cancel out Glamrock Freddy being a suspect. So the next animatronic on the list of suspects would, I guess, be Glamrock Chica. I really don't see any reason as to why she would want to do something like this to Glamrock Bonnie. She only has one thing on her mind, and that one thing is pizza. Plus, she doesn't have sharp claws unless maybe, just maybe, she used her beak? Either way, her beak isn't green, so it wouldn't explain the green paint. So with no reasoning to do it, and of course not having the proper murder weapon, we can just go ahead and cancel out Glamrock Chica as well. And I think we can also do the same with Sun and Moon, as they were always inside of the daycare, and it doesn't look like Bonnie ever walked in that direction. At least not the night of his disappearance. So now it brings me to my two main suspects, and one of them will probably really shock you. And they are the Mimic and Roxanne Wolf. So a lot of people do actually think the Mimic could have had a high chance of killing Glamrock Bonnie, believing that his reasoning behind it would be he needed to use some of his parts in order to give himself a whole animatronic endoskeleton. And don't get me wrong, the gash marks over his stomach, and of course the bowling ball to the head, seems exactly like something the Mimic would do. And this theory could of course be proven a little further when you want to explain the time gap in between not only the green room to the East Arcade, but also the East Arcade to Monty's Golf, which means he had to have had some interference. And it is of course possible that that interference came from none other than the Mimic. However, I can actually debunk this theory. For one, the Mimic does have sharp claws, but no green paint. And what's even more important and probably more obvious is the fact that I don't see any remnants of Glamrock Bonnie's body on him at all. And though the Mimic is sinister, I don't think he's in the business of killing animatronics, as he would have disposed of all of the others along the way in between FNAF Security Breach and FNAF Security Breach Ruin. So without a real motive in killing Glamrock Bonnie, I just don't think the Mimic is possible in this theory. And that brings us to my suspect number one, our one and only beloved Roxanne Wolf. See, Roxy's taken a new light in FNAF Security Breach Ruin. She's now a fan favorite, even going to the lengths of saving Cassie from the Mimic herself. But boy, let me tell you, I think Roxy actually has a lot more secrets up her sleeve than she comes off as. So you're probably asking yourself, why on earth do I think Roxy is the one that killed Glamrock Bonnie? Well, my theory starts off with one important detail. The only animatronic inside of the Mega Pizzaplex with not only claws, but green fingertips is Roxy. You see, Roxy definitely has sharp enough claws to destroy an animatronic, and the green paint left on Glamrock Bonnie's stomach is obviously from her green fingernails. And even if it wasn't, you can make the case that it's from her green keyboard that she carries around. And that's not all the proof that I have. Remember when I said that Glamrock Bonnie was making his way to Monty's Golf one night? Well, if you remember the map from Security Breach, you actually have to pass Roxanne's Raceway to get to Monty's Golf. So my theory here is, what if Roxanne Wolf saw Glamrock Bonnie walking to Monty's and decided to follow him, waiting to attack until he got to an actual location and spotted? Or she waited for him to come back, attacking him somewhere in between Roxanne's Raceway and the green room, and leaving his body at Bonnie's bowling. But then of course you can ask, why would she do it? And that is where I bring up the gondola ride in FNAF Security Breach Ruin. If you remember, this is the ride or attraction that showed Monty's rags to riches story, showing that he was once the one-man band who lived in the swamps and eventually was handed down the base from Glamrock Bonnie himself and became the Pizzaplex superstar we've come to know and love in Montgomery Gator. But who else do we see in this ride? Obviously, the whole band was playing when Monty was watching from a distance. What if I told you in this band there was an imposter? If you keep going down the ride, you notice that one animatronic takes a particular interest in having Monty join the band, doing his hair, makeup, and even giving him a new outfit. Roxy was very excited to replace Glamrock Bonnie. But for what reason? And I guess that's where my theory goes a little off the rails. Obviously, we all know that Roxy is very stuck up with herself. See, she believes she's the best, and she makes sure to remind herself of that every step of the way. Obviously thinking she herself is the fan favorite of the band. But that isn't exactly the case when it came to Cassie's father. If you remember, Cassie says that her father's favorite animatronic was actually Glamrock Bonnie, which I could see making Roxy just a little bit jealous, especially if he was the one that created the animatronics, thus making her feel the need inside of her to kill or destroy Glamrock Bonnie. And that is why I believe our new protagonist, Roxanne Wolf, isn't as innocent as she comes across. I'm sure a lot of you are probably wondering why Burn Trap isn't a suspect. And I think this theory has to be canceled right off the bat, because we're not even sure if Burn Trap is canon in the events of Fnaf Security Breach, as that ending might actually not even exist in Fnaf Ruin. But the burner's still in place. I don't think Burn Trap exists in this world. And plus, Steelwool did a really good job of showing us a quick glimpse of the Blob, proving furthermore that he is still in the game and canon, but they never did that with Burn Trap. However, if he was in the game, then yeah, I would definitely say he's probably suspect number one. With the little bit of green he has on his body, and of course his sharp claws, he would make the most sense. But I will say, I believe that Roxanne is the actual killer. Who knows? This is just my theory, and I'd love to hear yours as well. So make sure you comment yours down below. But guys, I'm going to go ahead and wrap up this video here. If you enjoyed this video, do me a big favor. Hit that like button, and if you're new to the channel and you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and turn on those bell notifications to help me get to my goal of 150k subs. Also, check out the video we did yesterday, where we explain all of the animatronics in Fnaf Security Breach Ruin. But guys, without further ado, I'm going to wrap up here. Thank you again for all the love and support, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Until then, peace out!